Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Matt Tague. I lead the customer service team here at GEM, as well as the professional services organization. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our session, which is From Tools to Strategy, How to Elevate Talent Acquisition Strategic Impact. This is something that's been on a lot of our minds as TA leaders, especially over the last year. So really excited to bring some great folks and great minds together for this session to talk about this topic today. So first, it's my pleasure to welcome Steve DeCorpo, Global Head of Talent Acquisition at Celestica. Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Thanks so much, Matt. Happy to be here. My name's Steve DeCorpo. I am the Global Head of TA here at Celestica. We're a $7 billion electronics manufacturing service organization. We're in 40 different countries, and we have a global recruiting team of over 30 amazing team members. So thanks so much, Matt, for having me, and looking forward to a great discussion today.
Fantastic. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for joining us. And next, we've got Joe Aluya, Strategic Advisor of HXM at SAP SuccessFactors. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Joe Aluya. I'm one of the HXM Strategic Advisors at SuccessFactors, and my role really is as a talent acquisition specialist. I've been working in the talent acquisition space specifically for about 30 years, and work with customers and prospects on their initiatives around talent acquisition specifically. Thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. And welcome. And last but not least, it's my pleasure to welcome Tom Lynch, who leads the HXM Value Advisory practice at SAP SuccessFactors. Welcome, Tom. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Again, my name's Thomas Lynch. I've been with SAP SuccessFactors for about 20 years. I lead our North America HXM Value Advisory, and that's a team of about 10 individuals who are former HR leaders and practitioners, and they engage with our customers to help them better understand how to leverage our HR solutions to enable their overall people strategy. So happy to be here and look forward to the discussion as well.
Awesome. Excellent. And just one quick thing for our audience. Not everyone may be familiar with HXM. I think that's a newish acronym in this space. Could either of you just share briefly what that is for our audience?
Certainly. So HXM is a term that we came out with in approximately 2018 when we acquired the company Qualtrics, which specializes in experience management. And what we really looked at is how can we bring together employee experience along with operational HR. And so that's how we came up with the term HXM, which is really an evolution of going from HR to HCM and now human experience management.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you very much for that, Tom. That's very helpful. All right, everyone. So together, today we're going to be navigating a few things on the shifting landscape of talent acquisition. We're going to be looking at how TA leaders, such as Steve, align strategies to core business initiatives. We're also going to explore a little bit about the integration of new technologies, data-driven recruiting methodologies, AI, and other areas, and also really about how we as TA leaders can better partner with technology vendors to get the most value for our organizations. That's something that's been on the minds of a lot of us, especially recently. So very excited to delve into these topics. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about overall how TA organizations can transform from a cost center to a strategic asset that truly drives the success of the business. This is something that has been an aspiration for many of us in TA for a long time. And the promise and necessity of doing that now is greater than ever. So there's a lot to talk about today. Excited to get into it. Let's go ahead and kick off here. So I'd actually like to start with my first question for Steve. So you mentioned a little bit about Celestica, $7 billion, global company, 10 plus countries. Like you must be busy, first of all. And then within that, I'd love to know, the time you've been there, how has TA evolved over the last, year plus that you've been in this role at Celestica? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Matt. Excellent question. TA's role within Celestica has evolved to a point where we're developing programs and initiatives locally in North America and implementing globally. And here's what I mean by that. Here's a few examples. TA has transitioned to a global COE for all things recruitment and hiring related. TA has stronger credibility with internal stakeholders, hiring managers, and viewed as a consultative business partner. as well as a significant increase in our focus on diversity and inclusion. We've implemented new metrics for recruitment, and hiring has really taken our TA team to the next level.
Excellent. I love that. And just to double click a little bit on that there, I'm curious, regionally, you have a broad, remit with your teams globally. Where do you spend most of your time? North America focused, or just curious what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So our recruiting team is in over 10 different countries. So I try to be involved in as much as possible, right? And some of the changes that we're looking to evolve our TA team to is our TA recruiters are becoming more proactive rather than reactively. We're engaged throughout the entire process, and also making an automation technology improvements around the world as well.
Awesome. Excited to dig into that a bit more later. And so with that, I'd like to just open this up to Joe. Actually, I have a question for you. You have such a deep experience at SAP working with so many different companies in the TA function. I'm curious, what you've seen, when companies or teams are able to successfully align their TA strategy to the business strategy. Like, when does that work well? When does it not? What are the keys there? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think aligning TA strategies to business outcomes is really critical for the business operations. There's a direct correlation between appropriate organizational employee resource levels and the organizational performance, like revenue and profit and customer satisfaction. HR business partners are just that. They're business partners working closely with hiring managers and leadership to make sure HR is providing the right employee resources to meet the strategic business initiatives. Talent acquisition has to work with business leaders to identify the appropriate short-term and long-term staffing needs to meet business objectives and company objectives. And creating a strategy to meet these staffing requirements is their core competency. So talent acquisition needs the visibility to long-term business strategy to meet potential skills gaps in the current workforce. For example, a lot of organizations are really trying to figure out how to use AI to really improve their business outcomes. And so talent acquisition in HR has to have a strategy to either find or develop these emerging skill sets to meet those strategic initiatives. So for companies to meet their business initiatives, talent acquisition needs a long-term, workforce plan for that strategy. And that's only going to come through that strategic alignment between business leaders and HR.
Love that. Let me just double click on that a little bit, and anyone else can feel free to chime in as well. But Joe, do you see that partnership that you talked about there about aligning on the business strategy? Should that be TA driven or business driven, or what does that look like in practice when it's done?
I think it's a combination of both, but I really think it's the working relationship. So if you think of your talent acquisition specialists, your recruiters, they're working day in and day out, or they should be working day in and day out with their business leaders and their hiring managers to understand the skills and resources they need in their departments to grow the business or grow profitability or customer satisfaction, whatever it is. If you don't have that strong alignment between recruiters and talent acquisition and the business, then you've got a disconnect that's not going to drive the appropriate growth that you need.
100%. And Steve, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but where do you think TA teams struggle with that? Right? Like, that sounds great. I agree with everything you said, Joe, but I know where the rubber meets the road, that's hard. It's hard to get in a room with the business, establish that, and then let alone operationalize it. What do you think about that, Steve? What have you seen about that, establishing the partnership with the business?
Yeah, I see actually there's a lot of misconceptions, between TA and strategic value. So excellent question. So just to kind of provide some examples there of getting TA on the same page with the business and also budget wise. Most companies do not understand if you cut costs for a TA HR budget. Companies find out the hard way by realizing what they've lost when it's too late after budget cuts. There's a really simple saying that I like, Matt. It goes, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And to dive deeper into a little bit of these misconceptions, TA is often viewed as a cost to the business, as it could be said that TA and HR does not bring any revenue into the company. However, partnering with a CRM like GEM, TA can provide data to the business in regards to ROI, such as money or hours saved, to provide proof by using a vendor like GEM.
Yep.
Love that. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, and I think there's an element there of proactivity too. And Thomas, Joe, I'm curious, to hear your thoughts on this as well. But I think, oftentimes, TA leaders are so busy in the day to day that they wait until they're asked for this data. Show me the productivity gains by doing this type of work, or show me the ROI of something. Whereas I think there's an opportunity to move TA leaders to proactively share this information with the business. And that's a muscle I think really needs building in many TA orgs there. But Thomas, Joe, what are your thoughts about that? Maybe Thomas first.
Yeah, so, in general, I think anytime that you can be proactive and you have the right type of information in front of you to make better decisions, ultimately you're going to be able to better serve the business. I know that in the case of SAP and SuccessFactors, right, we're looking at how business is evolving. We're looking at market trends. We're looking into the future in terms of what type of skills we need to better service our customers and leverage certain technologies. So part of that is upskilling our workforce, but also part of that is being very proactive and looking to see what talent is out there and what skills they have that we can bring in as well. So knowing what skills are necessary for the future and being proactive about going to get those skills, I think are key. And that's something that we're doing here internally within SAP.
Love it. Joe, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think going back to that misconception and seeing it as a cost center, I think a lot of people view talent acquisition really as an externally facing, candidate facing function. Unlike much of HR, which is employee facing, talent acquisition has much of their focus and activities on non-employee populations. For this reason, there's a large cost associated to talent acquisition strategies. This could be sourcing strategies, job boards, things like LinkedIn, assessment platforms, as compliance-driven, items like, background checks. And I think a lot of people look at the cost associated to recruiting and not necessarily the value or the benefit it brings to the organization. Budgets are tightening across companies, and all spend is really under review. But it's critical to understand that strategic and successful talent acquisition strategy is a critical function. It drives revenue, innovation, productivity, customer satisfaction. It drives corporate culture. So talent acquisition really requires, it's cost intensive, but it really drives a lot of critical business success. And I don't think you can just look at it as, the spend without the value.
100%. Yeah. And I think you've all in your own ways hit on a really critical point here too, is that we talked recently about breaking down or building partnerships with the business,
Yep.
right? So between TA and the business specifically. And I think there's also another partnership that needs more construction and more building within teams is between TA and HR. So one of the issues that I see is that TA teams, to your point, Joe, they're very externally focused. And they may work next to the HR teams, but there's often a silo between that employee data, the skill sets, all of that intelligence, and the external data of a company's employee brand or employer brand and how they're perceived in the market. So there's an opportunity to bring those insights together to collectively show the value of not only TA, but HR as well to the business there. Excellent. And so with that, let's actually jump a little bit deeper into the technology. So I know you mentioned some of the trends there about, obviously AI is on everyone's mind, applying data broadly. But let's actually start with Joe and Thomas. I'd love to hear, what are you seeing companies focused on today, either HR-wise or talent-wise in particular? What's on customers' minds that you talk to?
I think one of the biggest changes over the last 10 years in the HR marketplace is really around the expansion of cloud and SaaS solutions and what they've enabled organizations to do within their technology infrastructure. If you think, for decades, organizations built their talent HR technology based on siloed solutions. You had core HR platforms like PeopleSoft and others that were augmented by point solutions. So organizations would build their strategy with a point solution for recruiting and performance and talent and learning, succession. And when you think of those legacy recruiting technologies like a Taleo, they were implemented as a standalone solution, and not necessarily a business solution. So a lot of the metrics and functions that the TA department would measure were, time to fill, recruiter efficiency, open rec reports. The technology platforms today, and a lot of this is what SuccessFactors is doing, it's not a standalone solution, but instead it's integrated to a business platform. It combines core HR and employee lifecycle, like recruiting and onboarding and learning and comp, to actual business outcomes. So we're integrating to back office, finance systems and operation systems, manufacturing systems, sales systems, to understand the marriage between HR and business outcomes. So having better visibility to people outcomes based on company performance. So what effect does staffing levels have on productivity or on customer satisfaction? So I think one of the big initiatives over the last decade that I've seen is really that marriage between HR systems and business systems, so you have a true understanding and visibility to how my organization is doing based on the HR support that it's receiving.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. I think that vision you've painted of connected systems is quite compelling, especially in the age of AI, certainly, because the intelligence we can layer on those connected systems is pretty darn exciting to a lot of us in HR specifically. I'm curious, for anyone on the panel, we have, larger enterprise, people who are attending today who may be at larger enterprises, who may have these sophisticated systems, others that may have, smaller mid-market SMB, disconnected systems. What are some quick things like, how might they, start to do that if they don't have a sophisticated, GEM, SAP SuccessFactors type of offering in-house? Like, is there anything simple they can do to get started on that journey?
I think for me, when you think of the HR function, talent acquisition is one of the most complex of all of the HR employee functions. Talent acquisition affects, and it's also affected by outside sources. So understanding the technology that's available and what's table stakes, so to speak, what do I need? I think every organization at this point has a core HR system within an applicant tracking system. Once you get to a certain size organization, an ATS system is not a nice to have, it's a must have. And there's other things like compliance systems, like background check providers, that's a must have. The other part of it is really understanding where there's so many technology, capabilities out there. There's so many offerings in the talent acquisition space specifically. It's really understanding what's going to bring the most value to an organization. And there's an explosion, and you mentioned AI, there's an explosion of technology around AI search and match, digital assistant, AI-based assessment platforms and skills testing. I think it's critical to understand which technology or service option is going to provide the biggest benefit to the organization and focus on those. And I don't think that there's a single solution that is unknowingly being left out of the TA strategy, but I think it's understanding the options that exist and which solutions will bring that biggest value based on the organization's unique needs and not market needs.
Got it. Love that. So a question of prioritization, prioritize and focus where you can get the most leverage. I like that a lot. They always say the old joke that talent acquisition is the easiest function in the world except for the candidates. I do think that that's true in many cases. Let's actually jump to Steve for a moment. We're talking about technology and what companies are interested in. I'm curious, how are you applying things in Celestica, whether it's data-driven recruiting or analytics or AI? Like what's top of mind for you? How are you using that today?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Truthfully, everyone is excited about data-driven technology, such as with AI, and everyone thinks AI is a replacement, but it's actually more of a co-pilot, something that we can work with compared to against. So many different ways to implement AI. For diversity, you just want to be really cautious, measure twice, cut once type situation. And some things I've observed are recruiters having more time as data-driven technology can take administrative tasks, time-consuming activities off their plates. such as email sequencing that you could do with GEM, creating LinkedIn emails for you, and also finding the contact information of candidates. So this AI technology has allowed recruiters to reach farther into diverse candidate pools, helps uncover, untap previously hidden talent. So there's just so many different things you could do for AI. I would say many people are a little bit apprehensive or cautious or even scared of using AI, but consider it as an extra resource for you. And kind of jumping ahead a little bit, I see that as a major trend for the future. So I would recommend getting involved into AI, no matter what size company, organization, or how large or small your TA team is right now.
Awesome. I love that concept. So I think what I heard there is you're talking about AI as co-pilot.
Yes.
Right, versus replacement. And I think that's a trend that I'm definitely seeing. But Thomas, are you seeing that broadly with customers you work with, that the concept of like AI as a co-pilot in HR versus replacement, or what are you hearing from customers you work with?
Right. So we are seeing some opportunities from customers who do want to replace their recruiting systems. As you guys probably know, one of the hottest trends right now is the fact that there's a skill shortage, as I mentioned earlier. And so a lot of companies are looking externally to identify those resources who already have those skills, in addition to trying to upskill their employees. So they are looking at these new recruiting systems to get these skills in it, and it's more difficult, right, to identify these skills. So using technologies such as AI and machine learning to help them become both more efficient and more effective in finding the right people is definitely something of interest in our customers, and they want to learn and talk more about it.
Awesome, excellent. And I'm assuming they're going to continue to want to do that more in the years to come. Definitely. Excellent. So let's shift a little bit to HR tech companies broadly. So many of our participants in today's summit, they have their own tech ecosystems. They may have an ATS, as you mentioned, Joe. They may have a CRM like GEM, or they may have other point solutions as well. What advice do you all have for how to think about that ecosystem? A lot of TA leaders may adopt like a set it and forget it approach. They purchase it once every 3 years. They leave it alone. Is that the right approach, or should it be more iterative? I'm curious what y'all think about that. Anyone feel free to jump in there.
Thanks, Matt. I really like that question. And not only are we talking about how talent acquisition teams can better partner with their software vendors, but just overall how customers can better partner with software vendors and want to have a strong relationship and continuous relationship with them. So for us at SAP SuccessFactors, it really starts in the beginning, understanding the customer's business. What are their goals? What is their strategy? Also, what is their business need and challenges? And then we also want to be able to help that company grow and adapt to the different business and market trends. So ultimately, we're looking for them to have successful business outcomes. Now, what we have found, right, is that there's certain critical success factors to making our customers successful. Now, some of those, unfortunately, get ignored. Things like project and program governance, change management, and something that we like to call value realization, which is actually tracking the value of the project or the solution the customer has implemented. Customers aren't doing that regularly today. Now, when it comes to governance, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is this is not just a one-time thing. A lot of times companies will implement the solution, configure it, and then they don't stay current with the changing and evolving business needs. And that's where governance comes into play. And it's really a three-legged stool, right? It's the customer, which would include talent acquisition. It's the software vendor, and it's the implementation partner. Now, SAP SuccessFactors puts out different releases and updates every year, and it's really up to the customer to assess which one of those they want to apply and implement. But that's, again, where project governance comes into play. If you're not looking at that on a regular basis, there may be new technology or updates that you could really benefit from that you're not taking advantage of. So SAP SuccessFactors, we actually have a proven approach that we call the customer value journey. And it actually starts off in the beginning with our sales team and people like Joe and people from my team to really understand the business and ultimately identify what are the right solutions. And then there's typically a handoff to our customer success team, which ultimately works with the customer on a regular basis, and then sometimes brings in those initial resources to really partner with the customer to make sure that they're keeping things updated. So ultimately, I think having a partner, a solution provider that sticks with you throughout the journey is what companies should be looking for.
100%. Yeah, I think you made a ton of great points there, Tom. I think a few that stood out to me is, as on the customer side, as a TA leader, implementing any tool, whether it's an ATS, a CRM, point solution, whatever it may be, it needs to start with a why. Like they have to have a reason that they want to realize value. And even just asking that to yourself as a TA leader, like, what is that? Before you even begin on any selection journey for any product whatsoever. So I think it's understanding that with the help of yourself or others, in a similar position at other companies. And then also, to your point, reviewing that over time. Like it's not a set it and forget it thing as technologies change, as the business changes, always taking a quarterly or fresh look at your ecosystem to say what makes sense now and how do we best optimize as a TA team to get the most from that there. So a lot of great points you brought up there. Thank you for that. Sure. And Steve, what does that look like on the inside? You are a customer of TA technologies and various products. Like, what do you think is the key to selecting and working with different companies you choose to?
Yeah, sure. Being a large global organization, we work with a ton of different vendors. So, a relationship with a vendor like SAP SuccessFactors and GEM is critical to our success. And actually, ironically, Matt, we use both tools, SuccessFactors as our ATS, HRIS, and GEM as our CRM. So I believe technology is one piece of the puzzle. We buy technology to solve problems, but we separate our partners from just regular vendors. With partners, we work through challenges together as kind of like a branch of our TA team, rather than a vendor may just share an article or generic video of their features or functions. But having a streamlined and clear tech stack will honestly make your life a heck of a lot easier. And I believe in best-in-class tools. Our strategy is to have tools that integrate seamlessly with each other and work well with each other. So with SuccessFactors and GEM, they each have their own strengths. And by using them together, really makes the best out of the situation. So I would definitely recommend reviewing your tech stack, if not before, and making sure they work seamlessly together.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. And I would say too, Joe, curious to get your thoughts on this statement, but I've always believed that even if you have a perfect product married to a broken process, it's not going to work. And so I'd love to hear, Thomas mentioned this a little bit, but what's your experience helping TA teams with the change management piece? That's where I see a lot of teams struggle. Curious, to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And change management is got to be one of the most critical pieces of an HR transformation project. I'm old enough to still remember, one of the big benefits that people thought came with a hosted solution, a SaaS solution, a cloud solution, is that set it and forget it approach. And that's just not the case. I think, it's a technology delivery mechanism, but the technology is not set it and forget it, as you said. It's got to be an iterative process where it's being viewed quite often. And part of that is, how do we communicate to the entire organization? We have this new tool. Yes, the tool is SaaS, it's cloud, it's easy to configure, it's no customization, there's no internal infrastructure required for that, no technology stack, not a lot of heavy IT support, but it is a tool for the organization. And I see a lot of organizations not have the appropriate upfront communication plan during go live and initial implementation, but also ongoing. Getting that feedback throughout the process and understanding what's going well and what's not going well and tweaking processes is going to be critical for success. And communication is a big part of that. Upfront, to make sure that, okay, it's 3 months after rollout, what do we need to improve upon? What are the things we didn't think about, or what are the things we didn't have time for that we now have to go back and optimize? If you don't go back and optimize through configuration and communication, it's going to become a system that doesn't have that reputation that you want it to have and the benefits and the results that you want it to have in your organization.
Definitely. The image that pops into my mind as you're talking through that, Joe, is it's like someone buying an Apple Watch and expecting to get in shape just by having the watch, right? You got to back that up with the action that the watch helps you do there. So that makes a ton of sense, definitely. I'd love to know a little bit, some real world examples, Steve. I know you and I have had a chance to work together on some of your initiatives. You talked about the partnership, helping think through like your actual business problems. Can you share some examples like that with working with myself or with others that you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a ton of challenges that we've worked with together, and I've really appreciated your support. Matt, I view GEM, like I said before, as a branch. You really got to ask yourself the right questions. Do we have the right recruitment tools and finding the right talent? What could our competitors be doing more than what we're doing? But some of the challenges that we've worked together on is implementing metrics. Right? What are the most effective of metrics? How can we use GEM to uncover and untap more D&I talent? Right? So kind of things like that. Also about implementing AI, as we touched on earlier. So there's many different areas that we've worked on together, and just been super appreciative of GEM's support.
Likewise, yeah, and it's I think that's where the relationship really shines between any technology vendor and a customer, is working on those shared problems to unlock business value. Ultimately, that's what we're all trying to do from different angles. So yeah, that's been a great collaboration, definitely. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the systems in particular. So I know, Steve, you have a SuccessFactors ATS, you have GEM as your CRM. In general, how did you think about, all-in-one versus, best-in-class point solutions? How do you think about that trade-off there?
Yeah, excellent. We believe in best-in-class tools, as I discussed earlier, but the truth and the matter of fact is that no ATS or HRIS has everything. I think I've used pretty close to all the top ATS systems in my time in recruiting, but some ATSs may try, but mostly they'll only have 80% of everything and 20% still missing. So the dream for us is working with SAP SuccessFactors and GEM, making sure they're fully integrating. As we've evolved into a global TA COE, Center of Excellence, that consists of recruiters around the world, to make sure that it goes smooth as expected, you need to make sure these integrations are seamless. And one of the biggest things that we talk about, Matt, is making sure that the data is correct. So our reporting is accurate, and your business stakeholders and hiring managers and HRBPs that you work with, they're going to trust the reports, as you build kind of credibility. So by having that tech stack really seamless, working so close together, you do build that, credibility and that rapport, that relationship. So it's just super vital and important to one's success.
Definitely. Yeah. And Joe, you mentioned this at the beginning as well, but with being able to show that business value, I think you'd probably agree that if you have the wrong data, it's pretty hard to show the business value there. So the point Steve's making about the integrations, I think, is a pretty critical one. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, the and going back to siloed systems versus integrated systems, SuccessFactors has a large ecosystem of partners, including GEM. And what comes with that certified integration is understanding the flow of data and information back and forth, and making sure that our joint customers aren't working in silos. The value is not, I have a CRM and I have an ATS. The value is I have a CRM and ATS that talk to each other, where if I think about my candidate experience, they don't have a disjointed experience. If I think about my recruiter experience, my recruiters don't have a disjointed experience. I want to make sure that as a candidate, as a manager, as an HR professional, I can leverage the best of all of these technologies without being completely siloed. So making sure that information from my CRM flows directly into my ATS and then to downstream systems is going to be critical. And having certified partners like GEM is going to make sure that all of this works in a manner that the end customer, HR, is expecting. So
totally. Yeah, love that. Seamless, single source of truth, full funnel insights. That's the dream, right? Excellent. Yep. Excellent. Well, in the time we have left, I do want to shift to one other important topic here that I was hoping to cover, and that's, moving the needle on diversity. here. So I think, it's been a really interesting time. My own 2 cents is I think that with the current macro climate, many companies are not as, let's say, not as focused as they had been, in years past on diversity. And I think it's critical personally that we don't lose the energy that we had over the last couple of years on this topic. So, first, I'd love to hand it to Steve, and if you can tell us a little bit about how you're using data and some of the tools you have to move the needle on diversity at Celestica, what that looks like.
Sure. Happy to provide some insight there, Matt. One thing I've learned with diversity, many challenges and opportunities. It's an interview challenge, it's a hire challenge, and it's a retention challenge. But truthfully, many companies are pulling back, and they're not realizing the significance of D&I. So some of the things that we're moving towards is implementing metrics. It could be a 25% candidate slate. So 1 out of every 4 candidates a recruiter submits to hiring managers will be diverse. Same thing with interview team panel hiring members. 1 out of every 4 interview team members should be diverse as well. But so everyone talks about diversity, but what I really strive for is actually taking action and improving your D&I hiring. So using a recruiting tool like GEM, it allows you to see and view your diversity hiring metrics, such as you could search and filter by hires, by gender, race, and ethnicity. You could then dive deeper into seeing which hiring manager, which sites, which countries have the lowest or highest rates of diversity hiring. So the technology will kind of provide you with the data and then kind of offer solutions and recommendations to improve from moving forward in regards to D&I.
Love that. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I think I think everyone on this panel would likely agree that it's what companies do in the hard times that matters, right? Mm-hmm. It's easy to do things in the relatively easier times, but it's now that's actually more critical, I would argue. And just quick plug for any company out there. I hope you continue to still focus on that there. Joe, I'd actually love to hear, I think both for you and for Thomas, you touch much deeper systems, the HRIS, the ATS layer. How are you seeing companies utilize that for diversity today? Like what data are they looking at there to move the needle?
Yeah, I think one of the things when you think about diversity and your process, I think one of the critical aspects is to remove unconscious bias in your selection criteria. So yes, understanding the importance of diversity, but making sure that your processes and technology can enable this to remove the unconscious bias in your recruiting process. So if you think about, AI technologies like AI search and match, there are platforms out there that understand the selection and search without having necessarily an unconscious bias in that selection and search. And I understand there's a lot of regulation around this. I know that some states have put in audits for AI search and recruiting, but leveraging technology to improve the selection and remove bias in your selection, I think is a big way to make sure that the people that we're bringing into the organization and attracting in the organization are the most appropriate without an unconscious bias. And I think that's something technology is doing in the process. And I'll let Thomas speak to the benefits of that, but I think that's something that we can leverage with the technology.
Yeah. And I agree with a lot of what Steve and Joe just said. We actually have a team within our organization. It's called the HR Growth and Insights team. It's filled with some very intelligent people who have an organizational and psychology background. Every year they look at multiple articles and they look at what are the HR, they call them HR meta trends, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging has been one of these top 7 trends over the last several years. To Steve's point, it's not the top 1, 2, or 3 anymore, but it's still extremely important. And so, when you think about companies and the importance of diversity, you have to think about it not just from a recruiting standpoint, but across the organizations. And a couple of things to keep in mind, right? The word or the concept of diversity is evolving, and still it started with those groups that have been disadvantaged in the past. But some other things to keep in mind, and you think about what we've just come out of with COVID as an example. What are the experiences of the deskless workforce versus the person that's at the desk, and trying to make sure that we understand what some of those differences are to make sure that they feel included as well. And then also the generational differences is coming back into play. You know, we have a workforce that has 5 different generations, and each one of those different generations have different values, which are putting their blueprint into the culture of the organization. So again, you know, diversity is extremely important, especially when you look across the overall diversity of an organization. And then the last thing that I'll say too is that you also have to consider those employees who have been historically have historical advantage from being in business and working, right? They may be resentful from diversity, equity, and inclusion benefits because they may be feeling left out. So there needs to be really some strategies across the board, starting with recruiting all the way throughout the organizations, to motivate employees to want to support diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so I just wanted to say that as well, because if we include everybody in that and make sure everybody feels it's important, it will definitely have more of an impact.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Thomas. All right. So last lightning round we're going to go with. Many TA leaders, they're fighting for budget. They want new tools. They want new things they can do in their organization. What's one piece of advice you have for a TA leader who's struggling to make the business case? Steve, what do you got?
Sure. I would say look into your ROI, how it provides more ammo to the recruiters to attract top talent. How do you save recruiters time by automating manual and administrative tasks? How can you save money by boosting your sourcing capabilities while reducing your reliance on recruitment agencies? I would say many companies that I've seen and been a part of are spending way too much on agencies. So something I would recommend is build out your tech stack, build out your team, and save potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million on agency fees, so you can have more money in building out systems.
Excellent. Joe, Thomas, anything to take us out with? Quick wrap up here. What do you got?
You know what? I think, sorry, go ahead, Thomas.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so actually, my team actually specializes in working with customers on helping them build the business case. And I think what you'll find is that a lot of companies will want a new recruiting system. They already have one, but they have a hard time creating a very strong business case on why they should change. So you actually mentioned this earlier, Matt. I think there's really 4 key questions that a company should answer when building a business case. The first is the why. Why are we doing this, right? And we talked about achieving some of those business outcomes, like we said before. The second is the what. And the what is, what solutions are you looking to implement? But also, as Steve just mentioned, what's the ROI? And that ROI can't just include efficiency or reduce headcount. You have to actually have some hard dollar savings in that. And then the next is the how. What is the deployment and implementation plan? And a lot of times you will get that from your implementation partner. And the last is, what is the proof? What other customers, especially in my industry, are leveraging this technology today, and what are the outcomes that they're getting from that? So if you can answer those 4 questions, you could build a pretty strong business case and hopefully get that approved.
Fantastic. Words of wisdom. I don't think we could have said it better than that. So thank you for that, Thomas. Awesome. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for From Tools to Strategy, How to Elevate Talent Acquisition Strategic Impact. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Take care.